Welcome to Block 7 of our Crazy Patch Block of the Month. This month our special technique is mock embroidery stitches, which will be done by machine. You're going to need an embroidery floss in any color of your choice that will coordinate with your blocks. You're also going to need a sewing machine thread, either a regular thread or a decorative thread, to coordinate with your floss color. And it's always a good idea to change your sewing machine needle when you're doing any kind of decorative work. As you can see by the piece in front of you, I've selected 4 blocks, 4 different blocks, and joined them together in a 4-patch format. These blocks were all trimmed to measure 7.5 inches, so they'll be 7 inches finished in our quilt. As you can see, I've also chosen to layer the blocks onto a piece of white flannel. This will act as a stabilizer in my quilt, and it's going to help balance the weight of these blocks against the velvet sashing that we'll be adding later. The other reason that I've added this particular stabilizer is because I can iron my blocks to this and they stick because they cling to the flannel surface. Now I don't feel the need to use an additional stabilizer underneath, so there'll be nothing that I have to remove. The flannel becomes part of our quilt. Before I begin my mock embroidery technique, I like to set my sewing machine for a medium weight fabric and 2.5 stitches per inch. You're only going to need a straight stitch for this technique, and if you have a needle down position, you're going to find it very helpful. The look of your stitches is going to be determined by the number of machine stitches you take between the twist. This first row was done with 4 machine stitches between the twist for this large chain stitch. For a slightly smaller stitch, consider taking only 3 stitches between the twist. And for this fine detailed, there are 2 stitches between each twist. You can also combine the looks, where I've done here with a 4, 2, 4, 2 look for a more decorative look. Each of these rows was done with 6 strands of embroidery floss. If you lighten your floss to a 3-strand, you get a more fine, delicate look, but you sometimes lose the look of the chain. Before I begin my machine embroidery work, I want to decide which seams I would like to cover with my stitches. I can begin anywhere in the center of the block and cover any of the seams and have my tails of my embroidery floss in the outside edge. Once I've decided which seams I would like to cover, I'm going to cut a piece of embroidery floss that is at least 2 1/2 times the length of the distance I need to cover. I'm going to hold my thread, turn the flywheel of my machine to bring the bobbin thread to the top, and secure that so that I can snip those threads later. Now, as I'm holding on to both my top and bottom thread, I'm going to take a few stitches to secure those threads in place. In my needle in the down position, I'm going to take my embroidery floss, the center of it, and lay it right underneath the needle. Now I have my sewing machine set for a medium weight fabric and 2.5 stitches to the inch. So I'm going to stitch over 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. And then I'm going to take my embroidery floss and cross it in front of my needle. Don't pull it too tight, just snug it up against the needle. Then I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches, putting my needle in the down position, and cross the floss in front of the needle again. 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches, and cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, and cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, and cross. I can continue doing this the entire length of the seam, counting my stitches and crossing the floss. This will give me a mock chain. You want to be very careful not to pull and tug on your floss to make your fabric pucker. And as you can see, I have a mock chain stitch which is happening. It looks a lot like a lazy daisy. Now I can take these threads, thread them through a needle, and pull them to the back to bury my knots.